Hey guys, and welcome back to the official podcast of Development Unplugged. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about family. So therefore, I'm joined by my mother. And let's talk family.
Let's talk family.
When we talk about the tools of development, obviously we talk about personality psychology. We do it in a different way where we don't want to limit you or profile you or anything like that. But we talk about we all have different instincts. We all have different needs. And in family, sometimes those basic needs that individuals have can be undervalued, underappreciated, we sometimes rob our family members of their regenerative spaces, those environments that fill them with energy, with inner peace, and we force them to adapt to certain family dynamics. And what we really want to talk about today is creating that family dynamic that works for everyone, where you get what you need, but also where other members of the family get what they need, where we respect individual contexts. That's a tongue twister, at least for me right now. Where we respect individual contexts, where we respect the individual family members' needs, where we value the differences and use the differences as a source of growth instead of as a source of conflict, because diversity with mutual respect, with curiosity, leads to growth. However, when we have differences and we have fear, when we have frustration, when we have lack of curiosity, lack of desire to understand other people's contexts, what happens? It leads to conflict. And in many families, there are many unnecessary conflicts because people don't respect each other, because they have a one-size-fits-all approach. And obviously in development, we don't want any one-size-fits-all approaches. We want to respect every single individual as an individual.
Yeah, and that can be complicated in these busy times. We want to be effective. We want to be efficient. We want to be fast. We have so much to do during the day that if we might think that if we have to adapt to every single member, it might take longer. So what would you say about that, Janek?
Well, yes, there is some truth to if you spend too much time adapting, you might not get stuff done. But the burden of adapting doesn't fall in one individual member's lap. The reality is, when we are in a regenerated state in development, we talk about how we have an internal battery. We have a social battery, a mental battery, a physical battery. But really, we have an internal battery that we can stimulate to recharge, or we can drain it by stepping out of our comfort zone and doing things that really are stressful, difficult, intense for us. And if we have regenerated family members, every family member will have more flexibility. And then it's not just you that needs to adapt all the time to the needs of others. Then you share that burden, share that responsibility. And the reality is, personality psychology should never be used as a box of, oh, you're this type of personality, so this is how you function. No. It's supposed to be used as, okay, these are your basic needs and instincts. We will respect that, but we will give you tools so you can recharge your battery, so that you can gain more confidence, so that you can develop yourself in a way that allows you to step out of your comfort zone. And that will allow even the most introverted member of the family to participate in social events. It will allow the most extroverted person to sit still, organize themselves, structure themselves when that's required. However, we also have to understand that whenever any individual steps out of the comfort zone, their heart beats faster, the muscles get tense, so they start sweating more. It's more stress on the body, more stress on the mind, and a little bit of stress in key moments can be healthy, but chronic stress is not healthy. So we don't want to create a dynamic where people are stressed trying to fit in and meet expectations on a constant basis that really are very hard for them to sustain.
And something I have observed is that sometimes we put the whole family in a mold that might not even fit any single member.
Yeah.
So, at the beginning, it might take some try and effort. It might take some time. But I think eventually it will help you to find a way for all of you to function in a much better way, in a much more efficient way. And what I like about this idea is that we are giving wings to every single member.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to put them all in a box and say, okay, this is the box, we have to move it from A to B, we have to get this done, and we all have to go together. Oh, this is the way we are going to function. Is okay, you have your wings, you have your wings, you have your wings. Now let's fly together. And it's a completely different thing. I can tell you that as a mother, it helps a lot when your children have wings and you don't have to be dragging them against the wheel or against the elements.
Here's the thing. If you try to force people to do things, you're wasting way too much energy, because forcing things, while sometimes it can work for short-term situations, causes a lot of resentment. It causes a lot of insecurities. And when people have more insecurities, they become more conflict prone, or they isolate themselves more. It leads to more unhealthy behaviors. And while there certainly are moments where you have to double down, or where you have to insist, or where you have to find a way to get your message across, if you constantly are trying to control everyone, if you constantly are trying to control everyone and judge everyone when they misstep, or when they don't meet your expectations, what happens? You're making those family members either rebel against you, or isolate themselves from you, or mistrust you. Because I've seen it a lot when they're very controlling environments. People are afraid to share their thoughts, share their context, share their situation, because they are afraid of being yelled at or criticized or rejected. And it's very important in any group dynamic to make it very clear that you're not going to judge the other people, that you're not going to reject the other people, that they can share with you openly. And it's very important to pick your battles too. I mean, sometimes you need to have sometimes we've got to have difficult conversations, and difficult conversations can help individuals and groups level up. But pick the right timing, where people are less defensive, where they're more regenerative, where they're more open to have those difficult conversations. And also pick the right timing in the sense that if you try to force it in the moment, you're probably going to focus on a zero-sum game where for the other person, for you to win, the other person has to lose. And when it comes to family, let's face it, family is with you for life, whether you have struggles, fights, separations. They are attached to you some way, emotionally, mentally, physically. There's always some type of connection. Even if that connection is, oh, my family, I don't want to see them. They're there for life. It's a little harder to escape or hide from family. And yes, I mean, there are certain times where you have certain family members where it's really important to put some distance and whatever. That's never the first step with develop your element. We always say first regenerate yourself, regenerate the other person, uplift yourself, uplift the other person, share your context, understand the other person's context, and build bridges. But yes, when it comes to family, we have to be aware that our family is our family for life, whether we like it or not. And as such, we have to be very careful. We got to pick our battles. We got to be smart with the words we use. We got to be smart with our timing. And we also got to be aware of sometimes when we try to protect our family members, we're actually cutting them into pieces.
No, and the problem is when you put them in a box, you start labeling them. And if they don't fit the box, you will start judging them automatically, whether you want it or not. And you have you do have an idea how many times we have dealt with clients that are dealing and having problems with the labels they got as children or as teenagers. And sometimes we cannot see it in them, and they keep insisting, I'm this thing. And we're like, really? I cannot see it. But they have put that label and they are wearing it, and that is really draining them and having an effect in their lives, in their performance, in the way they present themselves to the world.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about 3 states. The biological state, which is the most natural. It's how you're wired. It's how you respond to stimulus. It's your basic primal instincts. It's just how you function. Then we talk about the societal state, is how your culture, your environment, your society, your family, your religion, your corporate culture, your friendships, how your environment shapes you and guides you, sometimes well-meaning, sometimes out of jealousy and insecurities or fears of losing you. And when we talk about societal this societal state, we have to talk about. Okay, it's nice to adapt in key moments when you're showing collaboration, generosity, and gratitude. But it is not nice to lose yourself trying to be something you're not for a whole lifetime or for years on end. How many mothers stop doing the things that fill them with energy because they feel that that's irresponsible, and now they have to be a mother, and the idea of being a mother requires sacrificing certain things. And how many of those, by sacrificing certain things, become less patient, less tolerant, less happy, more burned out because they sacrifice the things that fill them with energy. I can say for me as an entrepreneur, I had certain ideas of what it meant to be an entrepreneur, so I sacrificed things that I shouldn't have sacrificed because I felt they were a distraction, but actually they were the things that filled me with energy. And then finally we talk about the passion projects, those things that double a battery, that fill us with life, that turn the impossible into possible, that help even an introvert get on stage or an extrovert structure themselves and organize themselves, because when you have double battery, you have double patience, double resilience, double mental clarity, and things flow. And when we talk about these three different states, we have to understand, yes, it's okay to educate family members on certain societal norms, expectations, standards, but in the process, don't try to convert your family members to be more like that. Instead, give them tools to recharge, to develop skill sets, so that in those key moments where it's required to adapt, that they can adapt, and help them find those passion projects that double the batteries so that they're even extra patient. Because one of the things that we messed up with a bit in our family is we had certain ideas of what a healthy lifestyle was. We maybe celebrated more certain extroverted traits in some moments, and then we forced my sister to be more extroverted and go out there and have more friends and this and that. And what happened?
She got so drained. I mean, she moved to Japan.
Steve behind the scenes.
We used to live in Canada, and she moved all the way to Japan to escape the family. And maybe it wasn't just escaping the family, it was many other things, because one of her passion projects was Japan. We had lived in Japan when she was a young girl, and she promised herself she would return.
Yeah, her first memories basically were from Japan, so she always had a longing to get back there.
So that was her sense of home. Going back to Japan was where she felt she belonged. But how often we don't fit in our family? How many of us don't fit in our family and have this sense that we never fitted, that we could, as much as we tried, we couldn't fit? And the same sometimes we are perpetuating to our brothers, our sisters, our parents, our children, trying to force them to be what we have decided they should be, and not take into consideration what is their personality, how they function, how they react. And believe me, many people that are very reactive, that's not them. Yeah. That's because their battery is so low that they are in reaction all the time. But that is not the real personality. The real personality, when they are regenerated, will be very different, will show up very different.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about personalities, first of all, in Develop Yaman, we talk about 6 different elements. If you're watching us on video, behind us, you'll see the 6 different elements. We call that an energy scale. On one side, the most extroverted, and on the other side, the most introverted. We're all a mix of all the 6 elements. We all have a mix, a unique combination of these character traits. Each type is really a set of common character traits. And yes, there are certain character traits that are more natural for us and some that require more effort for us. But we all can step into any of these elements in any given moment. The difference is, will it fill us with energy or will it drain us? Will it require extra effort or will it be natural instinct? And when we understand that, it's okay. When I step into this one, it's easy. When I step into this one, I need to be a little bit more regenerated, or I need to get a little bit more creative in how I execute that because it's more difficult for me. So for me, I have a mix of personalities. I have something that's a side of me that's more extroverted. I have a side of me that's ambiverted, which is a middle energy that leans a little bit more towards introversion. So sometimes I have my introverted moments, sometimes I have my extroverted moments, and sometimes I have my very ambiverted moments. And most people have a unique combination of elements, of character traits that doesn't put them solely in the extroverted or introverted category. Sure, we all know someone who's very clearly very extroverted or very introverted, but most people are in some way, shape, or form an ambivert, in the sense that they don't go to one extreme or another, or they might be like ping pong, where they have very extroverted moments and very introverted moments. And when we understand that, we will be able to respect our family members more, because one of the things that we've also learned, my sister, for example, she's primarily introverted. However, it turns out that when she is regenerated enough in her introverted side, she has enough social energy to explore another side of her that's more extroverted, and then suddenly she's more extroverted than us and needs more social stimulus and needs more adventure and needs more exploration when she is in that state. And for us, for many years, it was confusing, because there was this generation set that was like, oh, she's the introvert of the family. But no, she's not just an introvert. And we've all had those moments. For example, my mother, she also has an extroverted side, an ambiverted side, and an introverted side. And that can get very, very confusing, because there have been periods of her life where she's been so extroverted that it's been like she's been unstoppable. And then all of a sudden there have been periods where she is very reclusive, and it's like, whoa, what's going on here? And obviously, the more you understand the different aspects of someone's personality, the more you can help them not be like that with the whole ping pong situation, and find more harmony and balance within themselves, so that they can be very agile but not be like ping pong all the time.
Yeah, and it's actually fascinating, this develop your element. I have said it before, I think it saved my life, because learning how to recharge my battery allows me to have a more even personality, a kinder personality, a clear mind. That is very important when you have the kind of work I have. And the kindness you have is incredible when you are regenerated. So when we are dealing with family, first regenerate yourself, and then you'll be able to tackle every single member, see what their energies are, or their elements are, and how to regenerate one by one. Or sometimes you can actually be lucky and find something that regenerates everybody. And we have it in the team in Develop Your Element. When we are very tired, we go to the movies. In Mexico, you have VIP movies where you can have dinner and really have a nice time. And for those people that really want a lot of action, they can sit closer to the screen, or whatever it's called, close to the front. They can sit together. And for some of us that maybe are introverting that day, we can sit further in the back or to the sides and don't talk with people, but we are together. So sometimes you will be able to find something that regenerates everybody if you are really aware of the stimulus each person needs.
Yeah, the reality is there are certainly things that you can do in group that regenerate the whole group. And also, people can regenerate with activities that are outside of the comfort zone if they have a certain passion. And for some people, their family is their passion. So maybe they have double battery and patience with their family because they turn it into their passion. It's not the case for everyone. But generally speaking, if you find something you're passionate about, if you know, the whole family maybe shares a certain passion, then even the introverts will be able to be more extroverted during those moments where they're exploring that passion. We've seen that very clearly here with the team, that when we do certain things that fill people with passion, suddenly people transform, and the most introverted person can suddenly be super charismatic and super talkative, right? And that's something that again we have to understand. Every person on the team has a different combination of elements, has a different individual context, so they each have different passion projects, goals, traumas, insecurities, fears, challenges, strengths, experience, academic and professional experience. Everyone has their own individual context. If you don't know what the word context means, the simplest way that I can describe it is it's all the factors, influencers, situations, all the things that influence a certain dynamic, an action, or a thought. So, for example, if my mother is acting a certain way, I can be quick to judge her. But if I don't understand her context, I probably am assuming things, filling in the blanks with my insecurities, with my traumas and my goals. If I take time to ask her questions to find out what is her context, what are her resources, what are her fears, what are her difficulties, what are her strengths, what are her instincts, what are her needs, what are the factors that are influencing this particular situation? When I take the time to do that, it's much harder for me to be judgmental. It's much harder for me to criticize her because now that I know your goals, now that I know your fears, now that I know your situation in terms of resources for this, okay, now I understand why you're doing what you're doing. But it's most people judge people prematurely and without enough context, without understanding the context, and that's not any one particular person's fault, because really it's the responsibility both of the person trying to understand as well as the person trying to be understood. I say this because many times people are not very good at sharing their context, but also many times people are not curious enough or patient enough to ask the right questions to understand the context of the other individual or other individuals. So it's very important to have an active approach to A, communicating your context, and B, inquiring, investigating, understanding the other people's contexts. Because when you understand other people's contexts, it's easier to support them, guide them, solve problems for them. But if you just try to solve their problems or guide them or protect them based on your fears, your traumas, your experiences, your mistakes, then it's not personalized. Then it's not necessarily relevant. Sometimes you get lucky, but in many cases, it's not the same situation. And yes, sometimes we take shortcuts and we see something that looks like something we've been through, and then we assume that all the variables are the same, and then we advise them based on what we've experienced in that situations. And the vast majority of the times, there is something different between the experience you had and the experience the other person had.
Absolutely, and the personality too.
Yeah.
So you cannot expect them to handle the things the same way you handle it, because, as Janek said, the set of variables are completely different. And take time to share your context in a way that the other person can hear and appreciate. And I remember I got married very young, and I left Mexico really very, very young, and I moved to Europe. And I lived there for nearly 20 years. And I would come home once a year. And I would stay a month, sometimes 2 months. And my parents will get to know me during that period. I will tell them about my hopes, my dreams, my taste, whatever. And then I would leave, and I would not come back till the next year or a year and a half later. And I remember that at the beginning, my mother would have bought me the clothes I liked, the food I liked. She was in her head still continuing the conversation we had a year and a half before. And sometimes I did not like things anymore. I had changed taste. I really fancied something else for food. And she would get so upset, but you told me you like this. And I had to turn around, and I said, it was a year or a year and a half ago. And then I realized I have to keep my mother informed of my life much better. So when she comes, she can have the things I like and feel that she's really part of my life still. And
I
it
will
really
give you the list of all the things I need, I desire, I want right now. And
but you are good at sharing.
yeah,
And
I'm
that's
good at
very
sharing. I'm good
important.
at sharing.
I mean, we learn to do that because so you don't have I don't have to send a huge list to my mother. Well, she's dead now, but before I didn't have to send her a list because I will be updating her little by little constantly. And it's like when you are updating your computer or your phone. If you do it all the time, it doesn't take so long. But recently, my iPad fell into the bathtub and my iPad Pro is dead. A moment of silence. And then I had to find my old iPad that it was from 2017. And I've had it for 3 or 4 days, and I'm still updating things. And it's still asking me for passwords I don't even remember. I have apps I didn't even remember I ever have used. And that's what happens. So many years, there's a lot of updating. But if you do it constantly, you don't have to do the same.
Yeah, no, it's very important to understand that each person's individual contexts are constantly changing because the factors, the situations are always changing. We live very dynamic lives, and there are so many things that influence a person's dreams, aspirations, goals, challenges, frustrations, sense of failure, whatever. And when we understand what are the variables, what are the factors, what are the things that are relevant right now, then we can tackle it. But if we see, and unfortunately with family, sometimes we do this, we see our brothers or sisters like when they were 5 years old, or we see our children like when they were 5 years old, because we have such a clear picture of who that person is and how they function, because certainly there are certain things that are fairly constant. When we talk about personality psychology, there are certain things that within the first few years of their lives are gonna stay with them for most of their lives. And then there's certain things that take about 25 years to build because your brain is still under development. But there are certain things that, yes, are quite constant. But when we let those few things that are quite constant blind us from the things that are ever changing, what happens? We start drawing conclusions. We start concluding things prematurely. For example, my sister, one thing that had been a constant for most of her life is she was introverted and she was shy. Introversion is need of less social stimulus. Shyness is fear of judgment. She had the combination of those two, meaning she was quite asocial. She was not very good at communicating. So it
verbally.
meant definitely verbally, but in general, she would be kind of reclusive and well, very reclusive. And it meant that growing up, we learned to speak for her. We learned to answer for her. Yeah. We learned to kind of conclude things because we wouldn't get clear answers. And obviously now, as an adult, she's more independent. She's more regenerated. She has found her voice more. And now it's very clear that, yes, she has a very introverted side, but she also has a very extroverted side. And she also has an ambiverted side that has a certain longing for connection. And when I kept seeing her as the introvert in the family, and I reinforced that, and I kept treating her as the introvert. And while that was very valid, I neglected other needs that she had, needs for social stimulus and adventure, needs for personal connection. So I started giving her a lot of space because growing up, I didn't give her a lot of space. I invaded her space and was not the kindest brother. I meant well. I wanted her to have the same opportunities as me. But once I learned, she's an introvert, I'm more of an extrovert, I have to respect those differences. It was a great step, but I went too far. I stopped including her in certain things. I started just giving her so much space that she felt neglected. And it turned out that wasn't the best idea either. So when we talk about personality psychology, be careful of the boxes, the labels, and the conclusions, because no one is just one thing. So talking about how do you create that family dynamic that you desire? Well, the first step is, one, have curiosity and try to understand every member of the family. Yes, it's a process, it takes time, but have the curiosity and the desire and the passion to do so, and learn the basic needs, the basic desires, the basic elements of each member of the family. learn the goals and aspirations they have, learn their insecurities, learn their fears, and then create a safe environment for them, a comfortable environment for them, and have an environment that's designed with sub-environments, because we talk about 3 different types of regeneration in developed development. One is active regeneration. Yes, that's an activity that recharges you quite fast. For extroverts, generally speaking, is increasing social stimulus, so going out with friends, going to a party, doing something that usually involves higher social stimulus and higher physical movement. Introverts, it generally is lower social stimulus, lower physical movement, and ambiverts somewhere in between. But it's generally activities that you seek out. That's active regeneration. Then passive regeneration is your environment. How do you design an environment that fills you with inner peace, where you just get in and it's like, you can breathe? Or they fills you with energy and excitement. Ooh, I love this color. Ooh, I love this texture. Ooh, love this organization. It makes me, it clears up so much clutter in my brain, right? When you take the time to organize your space and decorate your space, or even choose the neighborhood, or choose the car, or whatever it is, that those spaces that you spend time in, that they give you that peace. They give you that comfort. Because if you're a highly extrovert person, but you live in what looks like a museum, you might be like, I can't touch anything. I can't be myself here. This is too rigid, too rigid, or whatever, or exactly. And if you're an introvert and you're in a very chaotic, colorful, like crazy, high stimulus environment with 100 people coming in and out of the door all the time, that might be okay. Too much social stimulus, too much going on, too much chaos, and then obviously they're gonna want to lock themselves up in their rooms. When you understand that different people respond differently, an extrovert to a very chaotic environment might be like, ooh, this is exciting. And an introvert might be like, okay, I'm leaving now. And when you understand those basic needs and don't judge the introvert for leaving or the extrovert for going out and seeing friends, when you start respecting those things and seeing those as opportunities for your family members to recharge the batteries and then be more flexible for the group dynamics, then things get easier. But don't force group dynamics on people. Prepare them. If you know that your family members, some of them are introverts, but you have a very important family gathering, then tell them with time. There's going to be this family gathering. Make sure to be recharged and having your social battery recharged in time.
And tell them how many people and what is expected of them. Introverts like to know what is expected of them. So, okay, I expect you to be here. The most important part is maybe the meal on the second day. So, and this is the way we are going to dress, and this is how many people are going to be there, and whatever. That will allow them to feel more regenerated.
Yeah, because introverts, they're also less impulsive. Introverts, they need time to organize their thoughts before they can take actions or before they can express themselves. Extroverts tend to think out loud. They tend to be more impulsive. They tend to be more agile socially, not necessarily in other areas. But there's definitely tendencies that we have. So when we understand those tendencies, it gets easier. Now, I was talking about the 3 different types of regeneration, and there's a third one, which is the proactive regeneration. And proactive regeneration is when you have certain responsibilities, you have certain tasks that you need to execute, but those tasks might be draining you, right? And you might not be able to escape to an active regeneration, or you might not be able to redecorate the space or reorganize the space in the moment. So you might not be able to passively regenerate in that responsibility, in that task, or whatever. So proactive regeneration is preparing yourself. It's basically, what supplies can you bring? Okay, you're an introvert, but you're going to a chaotic environment. Maybe you bring some noise-canceling headphones, or maybe you bring a little, I'm going to say something that maybe sounds dated for a lot of people, a Game Boy or a cell phone or whatever, an iPad, so that even though you're in a social environment, you can disconnect yourself a bit and create your own little bubble, right? A hacky sack, says Steve. I associate that as a more social experience, but I guess you can play it yourself. Okay, so Steve says that's a solo thing. If you don't know what a hacky sack is, it's a small little bag of ball of like rice type thing that you basically play like soccer, like kicking it up and down and doing little tricks and stuff. I probably butchered that explanation. You can Google it, hacky sack, if you don't know what it is. But yeah, Steve likes hacky sacks. But yeah, exactly. For example, Steve, he brings his hacky sack everywhere. Proactive regeneration is that. It's knowing if I bring this with me, I'm more prepared to regenerate in that environment. And it also is, okay, embrace your personality. Don't adapt yourself too much. Don't lose yourself to fit in with the expectation of being a mother, being an entrepreneur, being a father, being a son, being a this, being a that. Because sometimes when we assume that we have to be a certain element to execute a certain task, what happens? We drain ourselves. It's nice to be flexible in the moment, but don't lose yourself. So it's also a matter of embracing your true nature and embracing those things that fill you with energy, but being proactive about it so that, oh, I'm going to be doing this task. It's going to be a bit tough. Yes, I can regenerate before and after, but what actions can I do to make sure that I have the tools to regenerate during that activity that might be a bit more stressful? So when we know these things, we can, empower our family members to go regenerate actively. Yes, go out with friends. Yes, go hang out in your room and chill a bit. Yes, go do that activity that fills you with energy. With the active ones. With the passive ones, okay, let's decorate a space. Let's organize the house so that there's some quiet areas, so that there's some very social areas, so there are some colorful areas where there's some maybe more basic design areas. If you have different areas that stimulate different types of personalities, guess what happens? Each member can go to those spaces and breathe, really feel at home. But if you decide, oh no, the house is gonna look like a museum, or oh no, the house is gonna be always a party, or oh no, the house is gonna be super quiet, I don't want anyone in the house, and you force that on everyone in the family, guess what happens? You're gonna drain everyone who doesn't share the same context as you. And then finally, with proactive regeneration is, okay, I know my family member has this insecurity. Let me help them, uplift them, make them feel more confident to embrace their true nature. Oh, I know that they are facing things that are challenging. Let me provide them with the tools, with the gadgets, with whatever it is that they can bring with them to those moments that are a little tough, so that they can regenerate proactively in those moments that are difficult. So these are tools that we can provide to every family member, and then we can create a dynamic that works for everyone, where there's this togetherness and then there's the independence, where there is a support of each individual, but there's also group environments where people can come together and not kill each other, basically.
And as if any of you is a parent, we actually, when our children are young, we learn to take their blanket and their favorite teddy bear and the toy and the food that they will require. So it's something similar. When you get a little bit older, you might not need a blanket, but you can have a little thing to play with. If you like to fidget, often you will see that we have our hands under the table, and what we are doing, we are fidgeting with something so we can stay in front of the camera and sort of look peaceful. Underneath, we are moving, And for me, comfortable things, soft things are very important. So if I know I'm going to go somewhere where I might get drained, something very comfortable to wear, knowing that I can go and sit in a comfortable chair, or have some soft thing with me that I can put somewhere and just caress it, will help me. So just find little tricks like that allow you to have a better experience to what you have to anyway do. And also, there are certain things you can do that you have to do, that if you do it at different times of the day, if you do it at different times of the year, if you do it slightly different, it will allow you to do it and feel better about it. I hate going to the supermarket. I've been always lucky to have friends and people around me that like to go to the supermarket and shop for me. But when I have to do it, I prefer to do it in the evenings when nobody's there, when they're about to close, and even the people in the supermarket that work there are super tired. So there's very little stimulus, and I can do my shopping in peace. If I have to be where there are a lot of children crying and long queues or lines to pay, that's going to drain me a lot. So I have learned how to do it. Also when I travel a lot. I try to go very early in the morning or very late at night, so the airport is not so chaotic. I know which airports are a little more quiet, so if I can travel through one of them, I will choose that because that will allow me to feel more refreshed and more peaceful.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a case of, and this is very. I mean, it's very trendy right now. It's growing in popularity. But this idea of energy management, right? More so than time management, energy management. When you focus on energy management in your family, in your company, in your workplace, in your group of friends, there's much less conflict, there's much less drama, there's much more harmony, and more things get done. And yes, obviously, if you have family members that use their regenerative spaces as an escape, that's a warning sign. Because I'm sure many of you are like, but my son goes out and does this all the time. My daughter does this all the time. And maybe you're seeing some not so healthy patterns. The solution is not to rob them of those spaces, but is to identify what are they running away from? What is that energy leak in their lives that is making them escape? Escapism is a huge problem. Are they escaping into drugs? Are they escaping into bad crowds? Are they escaping in their room and into books, or like
Bad
even healthy things like when it's in their excess can be a problem, right? So if you're seeing that a certain family member is doing something that you don't approve of, instead of attacking them or criticizing them, which will just drain them more and reinforce more their choices, identify, what are they running away from? Maybe they're running away from you because maybe there is conflict in the home. Maybe they're running away from a situation with another family member, and you might be blindsided because you see that family member as a great person, and it's not about being a great person or a bad person, but maybe that person stresses out that other individual. Maybe that individual has a huge debt. Maybe that individual has some insecurities because they got rejected, bullied, or hurt. Maybe they're getting bullied at school. Are your kids being bullied? Identify what is stressing out that family member that you're concerned about and help them solve the problem that they're running away from, instead of judging and criticizing them, which will just make them more insecure and reinforce more that they should escape.
And you should also consider if you're overprotecting them, overworrying, over-advising, over-taking care of them, smothering them with your love, because they might also be escaping from that.
Yeah.
Often we smother our children and our family members with our worries, with our love, with our care. So notice that too. Be aware when you're doing it. And if you have a family member that used to do it, remember how it feels. Remember all the time, we want to give them wings, not cut their wings. And when we overprotect them, we over advise them, when we overworry, we are cutting their wings.
Yeah, and also when we're overprotecting or when we are critiquing, guiding, advising someone, remember, yes, many times we don't have enough context and we judge them prematurely. But remember, many times we go straight to the problem we see to try to fix it, and we don't start by uplifting them and helping them be prepared with their energy level and confidence to face that problem. Because most people are surprisingly self-aware. And this is gonna... Okay, so people are very not self-aware in some areas and very self-aware in other areas. What do I mean by this? Most people don't know themselves and how they function and their basic needs. However, most people know when they're fucked up. Most people know when they've done something stupid, and they're very good at punishing themselves and reinforcing how stupid they are. That's something that most people are good at. So if you come and you say, you fucked up, you messed up, you did this, you did that, you're just reinforcing their insecurities and make them feel useless, right? There are times where people are not self-aware about those things, and you gotta be like, okay, see how this action led to this situation. So yes, it's fair to be, okay, you have to be aware of the consequences of your actions. Many times A plus B doesn't equal C or whatever. Like many times it's, okay, yes, this leads to this, but there's also all these other side effects, right? So you might fix this thing, but you might cause all these other problems. Yeah. So yes, like for example, if you're solving a conflict in your family, you might fix one thing, but then you might create a bunch of other problems that you didn't first expect. So when we talk about self-awareness and criticism, the best thing you can do is first recharge the battery of the other person, uplift them, help them feel more confident, then educate them on how certain actions have unforeseen consequences, but don't judge the action, judge the intent, because many times people have good intentions but have miscalculated actions, and educate them on how they can take better actions, because many times we take actions based on our context, which has led us to draw certain conclusions. I see it a lot here in the company as the leader of this project. Obviously, there are many conflicts, there are many situations that can be difficult, and I see how many times people have good intentions and they might solve the problem that they sought out to fix, but then they cause many other problems because they weren't aware of all the variables. And yes, when I've been too hard criticizing the action, those people have ended up feeling bad about themselves and punished themselves more. When I've been more diplomatic and a more effective communicator in terms of really getting to the actual important message, I've been able to help people identify, oh, yes, so my intent was good. What I did was as a whole good, but I could, for next time, I can do it in a better way, right? So with family members, we also want to make sure to do that. Now, what happens when other family members give us feedback? How do we filter the noise?
Well, if you know you have a family member that drains you, the first thing you should do is regenerate and have some passion projects so your battery is double and you can face them without getting so drained. Getting to understand their context helps a lot. Understanding their insecurities and your insecurities. Oh my God, how it helps. Also, start noticing where resentment drives either that person or you. And often is both of you. Yeah. One person has the resentment of something that happened years ago, or the attention you got, or whatever, and you have resentment for other reasons. And as long as you are putting your focus on that, you will be perpetrating that behavior. When you get out of that game, even if they react, try not to react. And the best way is by being really regenerated. When you have to deal with them, learn how to communicate with them, and sometimes they might not even be willing to consider regenerating or accepting anything that comes out of your mouth because of the resentment or the history you have together is so polluted.
Yeah, and also you want to make sure that the person giving you feedback has enough context. If they don't have enough context, that feedback is not as valuable. Still appreciated, value that they're taking the time, but don't let that cloud your judgment. Don't let that lose yourself, because many times we let all these voices get us off track, right? So the more contextualized the advice is, the more valuable it is. The more the other person wants to see us succeed, the more important their advice is. I say this because there are also family members that want to control us and limit us and keep us safe in a little box.
Or limited.
Yeah. Also fear of losing you, fear of you flying away from the nest, right? So if you see that people are advising you based on their fears, then don't give it too much weight. If you see that they are advising you based on really trying to uplift you, prepare you, guide you so that you can level up, then put more weight into their feedback. And yes, you can actively communicate your context and your goals and your desires and actively seek out the context of the other person to make that conversation, that exchange of ideas easier.
I like something you say too. You always advise me, if you would take change places with that person, place more value on that if you would not change or exchange places with that person. Because if their context is so different, if their life is so different, why do you bother so much?
I mean, there's a very big difference between getting entrepreneurial advice from a drunk alcoholic failure and getting entrepreneurial advice from a success story. Now, obviously, you have to understand that just because someone is successful doesn't mean that their success, their path to success is what's going to work for you. But you're probably going to get better advice from someone that you know they've figured something out in an area where you still haven't figured it out, and you can learn from them. So exactly the way I look at it is, okay, this person advising me is advising me because of their insecurities, because of their failures, because they don't want me to mess up the same way they did. Yes, I can learn some things from them, but I'm going to take that information with more of a grain of salt than if someone who has really figured it out, who I really want to learn something specifically from them, takes the time to train me on something that I really want to learn from them. Obviously, it's like, wow, I get to learn from someone who I really want to learn from. So there's a big difference there. And whenever you become an entrepreneur, you become a parent, or you start a new project, everyone has opinions on how to do it optimally. And many times those opinions can vary greatly, or they can reinforce certain stereotypes. But how do you filter through the noise? And that's something that I've learned. Yes, make sure that it's contextualized, make sure that they want us to be successful, make sure that it is based on our situation, not their situation. And yes, is there something that I would like to learn from them specifically? If so, I will make sure to ask the questions and set up a situation and a dynamic where there can be an exchange of ideas and there can be a learning opportunity where I can learn something very specific from someone. Just because you can learn something specific from someone doesn't mean you should learn everything from them, because again, your context and their context is different. So I've learned from a lot of the greats in terms of entrepreneurs in history, but I've also learned that many of their contexts are so different, and their personalities and their goals and their ambitions are so different that when I've tried to mold my entrepreneurial route based on theirs, it hasn't worked. And yes, maybe I've learned a little bit from one entrepreneur, a little bit of another entrepreneur, and I've little by little found what works for me and what doesn't. So also, don't make the mistake of trusting someone's voice so much and being like, oh, this person is the authority on this, and I'm just going to listen to everything they say, and I'm going to lose track of what I need or what I can do. When you're insecure, when you feel like an imposter, when you feel underqualified, it's very common that you give more importance to other people who've already figured it out. But let's face it, if you're innovating, if you're choosing a unique path, you're going to step into uncharted territory, and you have to experiment, you have to fail, you have to get back up. And that's when development, we also talk about embrace failure, embrace rejection, embrace difficult periods that are in the path to more comfortable periods, because in the path to success, there's a lot of failure, there's a lot of rejection, there's a lot of judgment. Whenever you go against the grain, whenever you pick a unique path, whenever you innovate, whenever you communicate something new to people, you're going to face those judgments and that rejection. And you got to embrace that as part of the journey, not as the final destination. And when it comes to family, they're very good at pressing our buttons, talking straight to our insecurities, and crushing our souls. So we have to be aware of, okay, this is normal. I'm going to face this resistance, this judgment. They're not rejecting me entirely as a person. They're rejecting my idea or my path, but maybe they don't have enough context, or maybe it'll take time for them to see it. But don't give up if you have a personal goal that you know very clearly that's important. Don't lose sight of that. Don't let your family crush you, because no one has a stronger and easier ability to crush your dreams than your family. because they know your weaknesses, they know your strengths, they know your buttons better than anyone because they've spent more time with you than anyone else.
And they are the ones that probably started labeling you from the beginning.
Yeah.
So they know what hurts. And as we have said many times, they not always do it to hurt you. Sometimes it's their insecurities speaking, their fears, and they are trained. But you have to find a balance between understanding and then being the victim of that, because you over forgive, over explain, over justify their actions. It has never happened to me.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Sell your ideas, don't justify your ideas. There's a big difference. Sell your context, don't justify your context. When you justify, you're trying to convince people in from a space of desperation. When you try to sell people, you try to convince them from a sense of opportunity, excitement, value. You try to add value to something. And selling is really the art of communicating the value of something in a way that your audience can understand. And yes, when it comes to sales, most people sell from their own economy, their own context, their own goals, their own financial reality. And yes, what happens is they miss the mark or they sell the wrong thing. And when we talk about personality psychology and individual contexts, every person sees value in different things, even within the same project, the same product. I always make the example of a cell phone or a computer is a million products in one. But if you try to sell a computer to someone who's using it for school, but you're talking only about video games and they don't play video games, you're missing the mark. Yes, it can be the same tool, but maybe you're focusing on the wrong area. So the more questions you ask, the better. It's, for example, with a cell phone. Some people are going to focus on the camera. Some people are going to focus on accessories. Some people are going to focus on functionality. Some on cost benefit. And yes, these are practical, normal, traditional sales things. But how many times with your projects, with your goals, with your ambitions, do you sell from your values and forget to connect and interconnect your goals and your values with your family members' values?
Yeah, and they might not be interested, and it's okay. Find other people that can back you up, that will listen to you, that don't have all that baggage. Sometimes you will need a reprieve from your family.
Sure.
And have people around you that will do that job that you're expecting your mother or your sister or cousin Franny to fulfill. They might not be able to do it. They might not be able to do it for so many reasons. Don't put all your eggs on the family basket. Diversify and get a network of friends and people that can support you that is broader than your family.
Yeah. You want to broaden your support network. That's definitely a very strong point. But I will say there are many missed opportunities in terms of you can build alliances and you can turn your worst critic into your biggest fan.
Absolutely.
I've done that with several family members. I've done that with several friends or even quote-unquote enemies. I'm not a conflict-prone person, but I've definitely turned big critics into big fans, because when you solve people's concerns or problems, when you fill the blanks with something valuable, when you solve those kind of things that stress people out in their minds, and you relieve their worries and relieve their objections and overcome their objections, then they will be like, oh, that person is more prepared or has thought about this more than I thought they had. Okay, now I can support them. But most people, when something new comes up, they instantly look at where can it fail. But when you prove to them, oh, I've already thought about that and I already have a solution for that, so don't worry, it's like, So there is certainly value in trying to turn critics into fans, but yes, you don't want to waste your energy and effort trying to convince people or justify your actions. And that's where there's a difference. When you identify that someone really has no interest in understanding, then you're just trying to justify. But if you do see someone is trying to understand and trying to support, but they just missed the mark because they don't understand you, that's where you got to be a little bit more patient and help them out.
Yeah.
So we are about to hit the 1 hour mark, and we have the goal to now make these podcasts 1 hour instead of an hour and a half or even 2 hours. So let's wrap up. Anything you want to add about family before we wrap up?
Have lots of fun. It takes a little time or a long time. So be regenerated and do it as a game.
Yes.
A game where everybody can win. Remember that. And allow them to win once in a while, because that will quiet them down.
Yeah, pick your battles, exactly. Sometimes you got to tell people that they're right, even when you know they're not, just to help them feel more confident. And then later time, when they're more regenerated, have those difficult conversations. Don't force the difficult conversations in the moment for the sake of productivity or solving things in the moment, because in most cases, you'll just destroy that dynamic more than what you'll fix. And yes, on that note, I think patience is a big thing that we should caution, because when it comes to family, people have had a lifetime to conclude certain things, and educating them, learning about them, understanding each other's context at a deeper level takes time, because we so want to draw conclusions based on the patterns we've seen. And yes, seeing patterns is good, but people don't always show their entirety to you. They only show what they want to show to you. And many people are way more dynamic and have way more goals, way more aspirations, way more projects than you even realize. Even people you've lived with and spent your entire lives with have more to share with you than you can imagine. So take the time, and if you take that time, you can build more bridges, you can build stronger support networks, and you can empower everyone to have the stimulus they need, and you can communicate what you need and stop being judged and start being supported. So that wraps up today's episode. If there are any questions, if there are any comments, make sure to put them in the comment section in YouTube, or send us messages in any of our socials. We are very easy to reach. And if you would like to be notified when we have more of these episodes, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell on YouTube, or subscribe on any of the podcasting platforms if you listen to us after the fact. And see you same time, same place next week if you want to see us live. Have a good one.